I'm Tom Lee, and this is Stories and Art, the program where I tell traditional folk tales and pair them up with artworks from museums around the world. Today I'm going to tell you one of my favorite stories, a Grimm fairy tale called The Queen Bee. And I want to show you a couple of paintings by the same painter, one of my very favorite painters. His name is Pieter Bruegel the Elder, and he lived in Antwerp about 450 years ago. He had two sons, and they were artists too, and one of them was called Pieter, so he's called Pieter Bruegel the Younger, and his father is called Pieter Bruegel the Elder. It would be really hard for me to say which of Pieter Bruegel the Elder's paintings is my favorite. I really do love them all, because they're ways to look into the past. Pieter Bruegel painted normal people doing normal things, going about their work, going about their play, having parties, and it's a wonderful way to see what life really looked like in Northern Europe 450 years ago. The painting The Harvesters is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and this shows men and women working hard on a hot summer day, harvesting wheat and bundling it up. Here up close, we can see the men and women working in the field. We can see the wheat, but we can see these women walking off with wheat on their head that they're carrying off to bundle onto a wagon. And then even further in the distance, we can see that wagon on a road. And then way off, painted in very tiny brush strokes, is the ship going off to sea. That's the kind of thing Mr. Bruegel loved to do, show tiny little details in the background. And I think that's what I love about his paintings, because the more you look, the more you see. So the painting that I've picked to go with the fairy tale, The Queen Bee, is this picture called The Hay Harvesters. And as always, you can go to my website, www.tomleestoryteller.net, and you can download a copy just like this on your home printer so that you can look at it in detail. And I hope that you'll sketch the picture as well. When I look at this and I see the little house at the edge of the field with a forest in the background, I think about so many fairy tale characters who make their journeys into the forests. And one detail I really love about this painting of the hay harvest, and the reason I chose it to go along with the story of the Queen Bee, is if you look way off in the distance, high up on that hill, you can see a castle. It seems strange to us perhaps, but 450 years ago, if you lived in Europe, you would have encountered castles. If you went for a walk, as the characters in the story of the Queen Bee do, you might have stumbled upon a castle. Maybe not an enchanted castle like the one in the story, but I don't want to give too much away.
Well, once upon a time, it was not your time, it was not my time, it was not anyone's time, it was once upon a time. There were 3 sisters, and they lived in a little house with their mother at the edge of a great forest. And the story begins when the oldest sister decided she was too old to stay at home with her mother and her sisters any longer. She decided what she wanted to do was go out into the world and seek adventure. Well, her middle sister heard her talking, and she said, "You know, that sounds good to me too. I think I'll come with you. You and I can have adventures together." And then the youngest one, the small one, she heard her sisters talking, and she said, "Well, that sounds good to me too. I'll come with you, and we can all 3 have adventures together. Won't that be fun?" Well, the oldest and the middle looked at the youngest, and they said, "You come with us? No, you're too young for adventure. You stay home. We'll go have adventures, and then we'll come back and tell you all about them. Won't that be fun?" Well, she begged and she pleaded until finally they let her come along. But they said, "Do not spoil our adventures." And she promised she wouldn't. So they kissed their mother goodbye, and they set off into that great forest right behind their house. They took one of the paths that went twisting through the forest, and before very long, the oldest sister stopped and she said, "Sisters, look, here is our adventure." And she pointed down to the ground, to an ant hill. And the middle sister said, "I don't get it. Why is an ant hill an adventure?" And the oldest sister said, "Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll kick this anthill over with our feet and watch the little ants run. Won't that be fun?" And the middle sister said, "Okay, we'll do it." But the youngest sister said, "What are you talking about? You leave these ants in peace. They're not hurting you. Why would you hurt them?" "Well, it'll be fun," said the oldest sister. "No," said the youngest, "it won't be fun because you're not going to do it, because I won't let you. I will not let you hurt these creatures. No, no, no." "Oh, very well," they said. "We'll keep looking for adventure." And they took the path further and further into the forest. After a time, they came to a pond, and all around the pond was tall grass. The middle sister was exploring the tall grass, and she found a nest. And in the nest were ducks and eggs. And the middle sister said, "Well, here's an adventure. Let's steal those eggs." And the oldest sister said, "Oh, let's do it. That'll be fun. The ducks will quack and flap and we can laugh at them." The middle sister said, "We'll do it." The oldest sister said, "We'll do it." The youngest sister said, "What are you talking about? Leave these eggs in peace. The little babies need to hatch. What are you thinking? I will not let you hurt these creatures. No, no, no." "All right," they said, "all right. You're already spoiling our adventures." She said, "Just come with me. I have a feeling our adventure is still waiting." So they went even further into the forest, further from home than they'd ever been before, when they came to an old tree stump. Now, the tree had fallen down, I don't know, 100 years ago, maybe longer. But there were bees in this tree stump. They had made a hive, and the hive was full of honey. And the oldest sister said, "Well, here's an adventure. We'll steal that honey." The middle sister said, "Yes, I've heard if you light a fire with lots of smoke, you can chase the bees right out of their hive and steal their honey. Let's do it." And the youngest sister said, "What are you talking about? Leave those bees in peace. They're busy, hard at work. We're just wandering through the forest here. Why would you hurt them?" They said, "Come on, it'll be fun. We'll do it." She said, "No, I will not let you hurt these creatures. No, no, no." "All right," they said, "all right. You have spoiled our adventure." And the girl said, "No, no. I have a feeling our adventure is waiting." Well, they went even further, and they came out of the forest all the way through to the other side. And do you know what they saw there? A castle. High up on a hill was a magnificent castle. The girls had no idea they lived anywhere near a castle. Well, as soon as they saw it, they realized a number of things. They had been walking all day. Soon, it would be dark. They would have to sleep in that castle, if anyone would let them. And they were hungry, too. They had no food. Maybe there'd be food in the castle. So they made their way up the hill. But even before they got to the gate of the castle, they realized there was something strange about it, because it was silent. Not a sound, not even chirping birds could be heard in this castle. Now, the girls wondered if there might be guards who might try to stop them. But there were no guards at this castle. There were two statues carved from stone that looked like guards, one on each side of the gate. But they were stone helmets, stone faces, stone swords. They couldn't move, they couldn't talk, and they couldn't keep the girls out. So they pushed open the great gate, and they went into the courtyard of the palace. And everywhere they looked, they saw statues. No people, but statues of men, statues of women, statues of children playing games, beautifully carved. But there were no people. They looked in the stables where the horses should have been. You know what they saw? Statues of horses. They looked in a doghouse, a statue of a dog. On the branches of the trees, tiny stone birds. It was weird. Well, there was no one to keep them out of the castle, so they pushed open the great door, and in they went. They went from room to room and from door to door. Every room was empty, every door was open, but they saw no people, only statues, room after room, until they came to the last door. Now this was not open. It was locked with 3 great locks. But there was a little window in this door, and they peered through to the other side, and there they saw a woman. Not a statue, a woman, but she was old. In fact, she was very, very, very old. And the girls knocked on the door. Please, they said, may we come in? We are hungry and tired. But the woman didn't hear them. They knocked twice. They knocked 3 times. And that time she heard them. The old woman looked up, and she came to the door slowly, and she unlocked 1, 2, 3 locks. And she pulled open the door with a creaking, groaning sound. They went into the room. And in the room was a table, and on the table there were 3 plates, and on each plate there was a supper. Delicious food, ready to eat as if someone had been expecting them. The woman pointed to the food. The girls sat down and ate. It was delicious. And then the woman showed them another room with 3 soft beds. And before they knew it, the girls had flopped down onto the beds and fallen deeply asleep. In the morning, the woman woke them up, and she never spoke, but she had a piece of stone in her hands with words carved into it. And this is what it said: "This castle and everyone in it is under a spell. Years and years ago, the youngest prince of this castle fell into a deep sleep, and when he slept, every living thing turned to a statue of stone. The spell may be broken by any person who comes here and does 3 tasks that are asked of her. If you wish, you may leave the palace now. You are safe, unharmed, and free to go. If you remain, you must attempt to break the spell. But know this warning: if you try and fail, you yourself will turn to stone." Well, the 3 sisters looked at each other, and the way sisters sometimes do, they said the same thing at the same moment: "Sisters, this is our adventure." And the oldest sister said, "Tell me what the 3 tasks are, and I will do them. I will break this spell." Well, the old woman looked at her for a time, and then brought out another piece of stone with more words carved on it. This is what it said: "Years and years ago, the youngest prince of this palace walked in the forest at the bottom of the hill. Around his neck, a chain, and on the chain 1,000 pearls. But that day the chain broke, and the 1,000 pearls fell to the ground and have been lost from that day to this. The first task is this: go to the forest and find every one of the 1,000 pearls. If you leave even one pearl behind, at sunset you will turn to stone. The oldest sister said, I will do it. And she ran out of the castle and down the hill and into the forest. And she began to search at once, down on her hands and knees, crawling through the grass and the moss. And do you know? She found pearls. There was one beside a mushroom. There was one in the roots of a tree, beautiful, tiny pearls. All day she searched, and all day she found. But as the sun began to set, she counted the pearls that were in her hand. She had 97, 98, 99, 100. But that was all. 100 pearls, and it wasn't enough. The sun was setting now, and the girl said, no, no, wait. And just like that, she turned to stone. And back at the palace, her two sisters were waiting. They hoped their oldest would come home and say, I did it, I did it. But she did not. And the middle sister said, that's okay, I'll go tomorrow, I'll do it. But she did no better than her sister. She found 200 pearls when the sun had set, and she turned to stone. Now there was only one left, the youngest sister. Early in the morning, just as the sun was rising, she went into the forest and she began to search. And she did find a few pearls here and there, but by the time the sun was in the middle of the sky, she counted the pearls that she had. There were 8 and 9 and 10. And the girl thought to herself, I'll never do it. These pearls are so small, this forest is so big. Well, the poor girl began to cry, and I, for one, don't blame her. She cried and cried, but when she wiped the tears from her eyes, something strange was happening. All around her were ants, hundreds, thousands of ants, all coming towards her. And she said, but what are you doing? Why are you coming towards me? And one ant came forward from this great mass of ants covering the rocks and logs, one ant with a golden crown on his head. It must have been very small. This, it seems, was the king of all the ants of the earth. And the ant king said, girl, don't you remember us? Your sisters tried to destroy our home. They laughed and said, kick the anthill over, watch them run in fear. But you spoke up, girl. You said, I will not let you hurt these creatures. No, no, no. You saved our lives, girl. And now you sit weeping in our forest. How can we help you? And the girl said, oh, well, that's very kind of you, but I don't see what you can do. I have to find pearls, these tiny pearls. There are 1,000 of them here in this forest. I can't look under every leaf. I can't look under every blade of grass and the roots of every tree. And the ant king said, no, you cannot. But we can. And the ant king spoke in a surprisingly loud voice, and he said to all the other ants, go through this forest, look under every leaf, under every blade of grass, in the roots of every tree, in the cup of every flower. Find 1,000 pearls and bring them to this girl. And you know what? They did. The ants scattered in every direction, and they came back pushing, pulling, rolling, dragging pearls. The girl scooped them up in her hands, and she said, thank you, dear ants. And the ant king said, please, don't mention it. And the girl ran as quickly as she could, not dropping a single pearl, all the way back to the old woman. who counted the pearls slowly and carefully. 998, 999, 1,000. Ha ha! So was the spell broken and they all lived happily ever after? No, there were 2 more tasks to do. The next day, the woman gave the girl another piece of stone. It said, years and years ago, the youngest prince of this palace crossed the pond in a boat. Around his neck, a chain, and on the chain, a golden key. But that day the chain snapped, and the golden key dropped to the bottom of the pond. The second task is this: go to the pond and find the key to unlock the chamber door. Well, the girl knew where the pond was. She ran into the forest, ran to the pond, reached into the mud and the muck at the bottom, and ew, there was no key there. She waded in until the water came up to her waist, and she reached again, but no key. She dove beneath the water, holding her breath. But there was no key, and poor thing, she began to cry. I'll never find it, I'll never. She wiped the tears away and whack, 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 whack. All around her, ducks came swimming. What are you doing? She said, well, why are you coming towards me? Quack, quack, quack. The duck said, come on, girl, don't you remember us? Your sisters, they were going to steal our eggs. We couldn't believe it. They said, oh, we'll steal the eggs. We'll watch the ducks. And then you spoke up. We loved when you were like this. You said, I will not let you hurt those creatures. You said, no. We loved when you said that, girl. Come now you're crying. You got tears in your eyes. You're all wet. What's the matter, girl? What are you doing? And the girl said, well, I'm trying to find a key. Somewhere at the bottom of this pond is a golden key, and I thought I could dive down and find it, but I can't. Well, no, of course you can't, girl. You're not a duck. But we can do that. Hey, come on, guys, let's find that key. And down they went, and up they came, and down they went. If you had passed that pond that day, you would have wondered what was happening. But one duck, the littlest duck, came up and up, and whack, 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 whack. In his bill was a bright golden key, and he swam proudly to the girl, and she said, oh, thank you, dear ducks. And the duck said, oh, come on now, don't mention it now, just get going now. The girl ran as quickly as she could back to the castle, and she gave the key to the old woman. She looked at the key and beckoned the girl down a long corridor. At the end of the corridor was a heavy curtain. Behind the curtain was a door. In the door was a lock. And into the lock went the golden key. And the old woman turned it gently. The door opened. Now, in the room beyond was a large bed, and in this bed were 3 sleeping boys. They were not statues, they were living, breathing boys, but deeply, deeply asleep. Above the bed, words were written. These are the princes of the palace, the oldest, the middle, and the youngest. They are alike in all things except one. Before they slept, years and years ago, they tasted different foods. One tasted bread. One tasted milk. One tasted honey. It was the youngest prince who tasted the honey. Now, point to the youngest prince, and the spell will be broken forever. Point to the wrong prince, and you will stand here forever, a pointing statue of stone. girl looked from one boy to the next, from the next to the last, from the last to the first again, but there was no difference between any of them. How could she tell which one had tasted honey years and years ago? Can you guess? One bee flew through the window and around the girl's head and said, "Girl, girl, you helped us. Let me help you now." The story says it was the queen bee. But when I tell this in school, children always tell me, "Mr. Lee, the queen bee never leaves the hive." I say, give me a break. This is a fairy tale. The bee flew to the first sleeping boy and gently, gently tasted his lips. "I taste bread. It is not this one." She flew to the lips of the second boy and gently, gently tasted his lips. "I taste milk. It is not this one." She flew to the lips of the third sleeping boy and gently, gently tasted his lips and "I taste honey. This one, this one." And the bee flew out the window and the girl pointed. "This is the youngest prince. I am certain of it." And she pointed. Crack, crack, crack was the sound that split the air as the spell broke. Every living creature that had turned to a statue was transformed back. The statues shattered and broke, and there were living, breathing people. The statues of the guards, the statues of the horses, the birds, the dogs, the men, the women, the children, even in the forest, the statues of the two sisters. They shattered and broke, and the two girls knew their youngest sister must have broken the spell. And all this cracking and shattering was so loud that the three boys asleep in the bed, they woke up. Oh, what a good sleep I had. Oh, brothers, I feel like I slept for 100 years. I tell you, I really do. And meanwhile, the two sisters came running from the forest back to the castle, down the corridor. There was their sister. They hugged, they kissed, they said, "You saved us." And the three boys sat up in the bed. And the three boys looked at the three girls, the oldest, the middle, and the youngest, and they said, "You're beautiful. Will you marry us?" What? Just like that. And the oldest sister and the middle sister looked at the youngest sister and they said, "You know what? You turned out to be the smart one all along. Everything you said was right and everything we did was wrong. What do you think we should do? Should we marry these guys?" And the youngest one said, "I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. We'll think about it. We'll definitely think about it." And that was the last I heard of any of them. So I never found out if the three girls married the three boys or not. But I have a feeling, whatever they decided to do, they all lived happily ever